Hello, everyone. My name is Kyra Oliver. Welcome to the You podcast. You is for your own utopia. And that's why I'm here. I want to help you create that. I went through depression. I lost my 4.5-month-old son, and I ended up finding triathlon and running and just a health and wellness lifestyle that's just a part of my every single day. I mean, before this podcast, I had to go get my run in. I managed 10 miles today. I did 15 yesterday. I love it. You don't have to run super long distances or be an amazing triathlete, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I just want you, audience, to understand that health and wellness is a huge part and a great technique in terms of managing life. So that's what Your Own Utopia is all about. And today's guest has found her own utopia. Today, it's a really unique guest. And I say that because a few weeks ago, I interviewed Mulkey. Some of you may have listened to that interview, and if you haven't, you definitely need to check it out. Noel is a former heroin addict turned competitive triathlete. And when I say competitive, I mean, I think his half iron in Galveston he just did was in 4 hours and 29 minutes. Was that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And which is really, really good. So if you don't know, and if you do, just go look it up. And it occurred to me after talking to Noel that there was a part two. And part two is here today with us. I want to introduce you to Karen Mulkey, aka Momma Mulkey. I have to say that because I just love it. And Karen is also a triathlete, and she loves Noel deeply. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the love for a child, which I know oh so well, and her love and huge role in the recovery for Noel's recovery and ultimately helping change his life. Karen, welcome.
Well, thank you, Kyra. I appreciate it. Yeah, Noel has been, he actually qualified for world championships with that Galveston. So we're going to get to go to Utah for that. So that'll be exciting.
That's great. That's a little closer to me. That's so awesome. You're in Tulsa, right?
Right. We're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which actually turns out to be not a bad triathlon community here as well. There's been lots of group rides. We're getting our first Ironman coming up in May 23rd. So it's been kind of exciting. We were supposed to have it last year, but due to the pandemic, we're having it this year. So
yeah. And I do want to talk about that in a little bit. Before we go to that, I just want to kind of take a step back a little bit. And you have been yourself a triathlete for a long. When did you start triathlon?
Well, I started when I was in actually college, running in a gym because I was in upstate New York going to school. So I ran around the gym because it was cold and just kept starting. And just like you, Kyra, as you were explaining, I found it because I was insecure, depressed. I actually came from kind of a strange family myself. But I just really found it to be something that I could do. And at that time I could do well. And I went out and did my first 5K in 2020 and did all kinds of things. And then I eventually met my husband back then. And so that's pretty much was our life. We owned a bike store that had running equipment and fitness equipment. So it really was our lifestyle for a long time.
Wow. And even owning a store. I mean, that's so cool. Little side note, I just popped into my head. This wasn't that long ago, actually, but I had created a plant-based ice cream that
good for you.
That I served, created and made and served in a bike store. They had a little cafe.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that.
So the bike, so you were then, both of you were involved in triathlon.
Oh, we were super involved in all our friends and our whole community. This was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then my husband actually went ahead and applied to medical school. This was like way long ago, 30 something years ago. And then he applied to medical school and we moved to Tulsa and we've been here for the last 30 years. So try to keep it up as much as possible, but during med school and kids, it was a little hard to do, but I didn't want to give up on it. I kept running and biking and trying to swim throughout this period of time. But I'll tell you, there had been a hiatus for a while, um, doing work in school, well, taking kids to school and soccer games, and
Being a
you keep
mom.
busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and
You have two
but
kids. Is it two
right,
kids?
two. I have Noel and Nat, his twin sibling. But I do want to say something. That was one of the things, I kind of would like to back up on that too, because I feel like even amongst that really busyness, there's still time. And as you were mentioning, taking care of yourself during those times and whatever it is that will keep you happy, because you wind up giving so much of yourself sometimes that you forget yourself. And then
Yeah.
you'll all of a sudden go, wait a minute, I like doing that. And I forgot about it. So
Right.
there can be a little bit of resentment or whatever, but you're so busy. It's really good to just remember, hey, I'm worth it, and take the minute to go run or whatever it is to
I
go
love
do,
that.
you know?
I love that
Mhm.
you're sharing that. And one of the things that I talk a lot about too is that when we do take care of ourselves, and because we are worth it, we need to do these things. It's super important for our mental, not just our physical health, it's our mental health. I think people
Right,
forget that part.
right.
But we're able to be better for those around us. Don't you find that?
Oh, absolutely. And you're so right. And I love the fact that you do this podcast to remind people of that, because as I said, especially as mothers, no, I can't tell you how many times I went on a run and felt guilty because I left my kids at home for just a minute. Well, not alone, but with their dad, or even
Right.
I've done to the point where I've actually, way back when they were teeny, I'd hire a babysitter just so I could go do my run, because it was so important to my mental health.
Right.
And so uh, it was kind of one of those things that I splurged on, not going out to eat or not doing something, so that I could just make sure I could get that done. So it was
Yeah.
important to me.
Well,
Mhm.
and no, I love that. And you just mentioned something that I think is super important, and maybe you have a little more insight.
Yeah.
Guilt. So
Ugh.
it's huge. And you may know Brene Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her, but
Yes, I do.
a
Yes.
lot about
Hmm.
shame and vulnerability and guilt.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. I love her. Hmm.
And how do it's something actually I'm practicing myself in just simple things, like if I decided, somebody invited me to do something, and of course I would want to go, but I didn't, not because I didn't want to be there. It's because I had something else that I needed to do that was important. How do we balance that? Like not feeling guilty, understanding, that it's okay. You don't need to feel guilty about making a decision that is healthy for you. I mean, do you have any insight on that?
Well, I think that's the like one of the $1 million questions for moms. But one of the things I do want to say, and I'm going to relate it back to moms more, or and just because of this, because it made me feel like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. So I was a working mom, pretty much taking the kids, and Ed was in residency, and I'd take him at 6 o'clock in the morning till almost 5 o'clock at night. And I felt so bad for doing this, but we, at that time, were one home income. But one time I was driving Nat, Noel's sibling, home from picking them up at a friend's house after. And mom, then the cookies were so good that she had in her lunch bucket. And I thought, oh my God, this woman has made homemade cookies. And I said, Nat, well, her mom has a little bit more time, because one was an at-home mom, but working at home, which is great. I would love to have had a chance maybe to do some of that. Oh, it's okay, mom. She stays at home and you don't, so it's okay. I love, something. Would you rather have homemade cookies? No, no, mom, I'm glad you're working. So that was such an insight at being 6 or 7 that I realized they almost, it's a good thing that the kids can see your independence, because
Right.
and now, almost 20 years later, Nat is very independent and Noel is becoming very independent. So they see that it's good modeling.
Yeah.
At that time, you feel guilty about it. Now, back to your question about, well, a friend invited me over and I just really don't feel like it because I got to get up and do a long bike ride in the morning. I'm beginning to, at my age, is sort of compartmentalize what is really important.
Mhm.
for me. And, you only sort of, whether you believe it or not, only have so much time on earth. And you really do at this point in life, or my point in life, really, I've been through all this, and it's now time to really take care of myself as well, and
Mhm.
to sort of enjoy what is coming forward. So
Yeah.
does that help you? Or
No,
does
it
that, what do you
does.
think?
It does. No, I agree because I think I'm in that I'm moving into that space right now and I'm loving it. I'm I'm getting better at realizing what is good for me and that's what I need to do. Doesn't mean I don't want to give and be
Right,
thoughtful and all that, but it's more of a being realistic. Like I can't do everything
right.
and I'd love to be able to do everything, but I can't. So, what is good for me in my life? Because we're all different. We all want different things. We all need different things. And being able to prioritize that and seek out those things, I'm finding is far more rewarding.
And one of the things too I want to add to your is podcasts like this, where we're grouping together and saying and sharing that with others, that it's okay. Because
Right.
years ago, you didn't have that. You didn't have the people telling you, um, oh, it's okay to go run and give your kid a babysitter. I mean, it just was unheard of. So that, so anyway, just
Yeah.
sharing that part. So
Yeah. No, no, I
this is
love that.
wonderful.
I love that so much. And the other part that I'm practicing too, which I think kind of feeds into this, is that um, recognizing when you have kind of that feeling that might be bugging you. It's okay to, I think, have the awareness of the feeling, and then you move on. Like
Right.
okay, like
Absolutely. Well, there it is, and move
yeah,
on. Try to
yeah,
move
and then
on.
move on. Like I'm good. I'm done thinking about that, and move on. Well,
Great.
thank you for sharing that insight as a mom. And we had a little bit of an email back and forth where you had said you were reading my book and we talked about
Mhm.
my son. And I said, yeah, Mother's Day's coming up or something, or that was what was in my head. And I am still a mom, even though I lost my son.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really, really nice of
You
you.
don't ever lose that.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast with you this month too, because I do want to celebrate moms a lot this month, the month of May. And you, I just got to say, with everything that you were just worried about and not giving back, or feelings of guilt or whatever with the kids, you actually are a stellar mom in some really big ways. So I want to move into that a little bit. And I know this could be a hard conversation, but just,
Mhm.
share what you want. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Noel had moved into, well, he had told me it began in 8th grade.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and he had so it had begun in 8th grade, and he said there wasn't a day from that moment, that day, that I think a friend had shot him up with intravenous prescription meds, I think is what it was then. Um, and there wasn't a day from then into, I guess, the beginnings of college or whatever, that he was not on something. And so, in thinking about this and talking to you, I wanted to know, like, at what point did you realize something was up? Because I think there's a point where, okay, kids are kids, right? And you're just thinking kids are kids. But then there's some point where you're like, wait a minute, something's not right.
So when he was in 8th grade, he was a great student up until, well, actually 7th and 8th grade. And then I remember trying to get him to go to his 8th grade graduation. And we were sitting in the car, dropped Nat off. He wouldn't get out of the car, could not get him out of the car to go to his graduation. So I knew at that point something was wrong. So I brought him home and dropped him off because he's 8th grade, so that I could go back and watch Nat graduate from 8th grade. And Dad was at work. And I want to say something. Ed was always there, but he was busy working, so it was really hard. So a lot of this fell back on me. So then I came home, and for some reason, I found him, and well, he had drank a whole bottle of uh, yeah, I think it was I don't know, something, completely passed out. So I took him to the ER, and from there on, it just got worse and worse. Those, I can tell you, were the worst 5 years of my life ever. And I can't imagine ever going back through those years. So I took him to the ER, and he was just, it was just, thankfully we got to save his life that day. And it had been 3 or 4 times that we had to sort of do this. And it just got worse and worse. So I was trying to get him to different psychologists and psychiatrists as best as I could, but nobody ever really diagnosed the fact that he had a mental illness. And that was the sad thing, until we finally got him to a rehab area, but that was much later on in the process. So I can't tell you, it just consumed my life. You talk about guilt. I felt bad about going to work. I'd come home and I could smell the pot in the house. I mean, it wasn't like it was not obvious. I could tell all the time, but it just was, you're lost. You don't know where to go, who to talk to, what to do. And it's surprising how hard it is to find well, in the state I was in Oklahoma, this is been a while, but it's still the same today, how hard it is to find really help in doing this and trying to get your kids straight. And there was no facilities that would take him because he wasn't a harm to himself or others. And I was like, how could you be not a harm to yourself when you're 12 years old or whatever you are at 8th grade and you're drinking a whole bottle of vodka? That's not a harm. So it was just perpetuating this kind of behavior by not finding a place to help stop it. And he had a friend come over, and I kind of knew what they were doing, caught them doing it. It just was just the most horrible years of my life and our life. And the reason I said guilt is because I would go to work knowing this was going on at home, but I couldn't go back home because I was working. And so it was kind of really hard to take care of all that. And there was a point where we were able to, I don't want to, because it's expensive to do rehab and do those kinds of things and get the proper help. And that shouldn't be the case, but it is. So, because especially nowadays with so much drug abuse and given, so for me, my mother had died and I was left some money. So we were able to use that money and we put him in. So he didn't really go to college. He went to rehab instead for the price of it. But we did a complete intervention. His sibling came home and we had somebody pick him up and take him to Minnesota. This was almost when he was about 20, I think we did that. And they took him, and he decided, because he was 18, he could sign himself out. And he signed himself out from this rehab, but we left him in the airport to try to find a different rehab that he would go to. So we were trying to compromise. And so then he wound up going down to Florida, and he got pretty clean for a while down there until some things happened again. And then he came home, and we wound up having another intervention. And then he got back into, he actually withdrew, and I sat with him while he withdrew, because we took him to another hospital here in town. And it was just, that hospital, it was a different situation. But he didn't really answer the questions that they needed. So I said, let's just get out of here. And he was on Suboxone. And so he and I stayed in his room, and he withdrew, and I stayed with him. So it was just the worst years, and I can't imagine. And the thing that's interesting about it, Kyra, is you talk to Kyra, sorry. You talk to different people, and you bring this up. It's amazing how many people have this issue in their families, between loved ones committing suicide, or actually even having loved ones in prison for, I just could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's a terrible way to,
Well, I have, my brother was an addict and alcoholic, and I still to this day feel so much pain for what I wish I could have done, but I also understand that he needed to decide, like Noel said, when he went through the first intervention, he knew he wasn't done, even though he did well and he was there in Florida for a year or however long.
Right.
And he did really well. He knew he wasn't done. And then he and this roommate, also former addict, that turned into, not so good. And then they came back. But yeah, I think about my brother and the pain. And I think that this is what maybe I want to talk about for a second. The pain that there's pain that we feel, but maybe I'm a bit of an empath or something, but there's pain that we feel for the pain we know they feel.
Absolutely. I can't tell you. I mean, for what he looked like, what he was going through, just as a, well, as a human being, you kind of feel that pain. But as a mother, watching your kid go through stuff like this and knowing, and we have a pool, and he was in the pool one time and he kind of passed out in the pool. Had I not seen that, he could have drowned. He didn't know. And it's just on and on. And, but I do want to say something. You're right. You had said something really until Noel decided he wanted to stop. That was what it is. And I don't know what it is about addiction. And I think the Suboxone helped or whatever. I'm not positive, but that's really where the rubber hits the road, is really if somebody wants, because it's not easy. Oh my goodness. It's just not easy. And so, but yeah, watching your child go through this, or a loved one like your brother, or, my father had a little bit of an issue too when he would, it's very sad. It's very hard.
Well, and I think with a child, there's a love that you just cannot know until you have a child. And I'm so
Right.
grateful yeah, I'm so grateful I understand that love, even though my son Hayes isn't here and I only had 4.5 months with him. Whoa, is that love intense? Like you just, wow. And so, yes, it was my brother. I have a deep love for him, but I don't think it would compare. Like, so if Hayes were here now and he was going through that, I don't know that I would be able to survive it. I mean, Karen, how did you like?
I had actually had a friend at work that was very supportive, that helped. And I remember, I do want to say something about, just throw this out. My husband and I were married for 10 years before we decided to have kids, because we didn't know if we wanted to have that responsibility, to be honest. And it's just amazing, your love that you're talking about, between being a person saying, oh, that's the kid kind of thing, and you being a mother. There is huge amounts of difference. And then before you knew it, I never cried at commercials. Now I cry all the time. It's just something twigs. But I just felt like honestly, I didn't know if we were ever going to get through it. I didn't know what to do. I personally didn't want to kick him out onto the streets. And I've heard that's, people tell you all their things, but I couldn't imagine him living out on the streets. I had a friend who just kicked her son out, and, he was homeless, and I couldn't deal with these kinds of things.
So when you said to him the first intervention, it's either the streets or you go with this man right now, like it took
That's
a lot of
actually
guts to say that, right? You're like,
right. That was
I'm
it.
ready to say this, but I have to say it, right?
Right, because I really almost felt like I should have done that. You could go the shoulds, but he did do it that day. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have said this way earlier, because maybe he would have done the right thing then. But it doesn't matter. But he did go. He knew. We told him that was it. Couldn't do it anymore. Going to change the locks, and so that's how we got him out the door. It took a little while to get him out the door. And he was really, he really was on a pretty good path down there for a while, until he met up with this roommate of his, and he wasn't ready in his head. But when he came back, he decided that was enough. And so it was really important, because he got kicked out, evicted out of the apartment down there. I mean, he was stranded down there. Pretty much almost homeless, although, we could try to help him to get back here from Florida back to Tulsa. But yeah, that he saw the light, that this could be the way he would have to live.
So when he came back, I want to touch on this just a little bit. I know that he came back and some really, really big things happened. It was almost like the
Yeah.
big turning points happened. And I think he said it was within like just like a week or 2 to 3 days, like boom, boom, boom. But one of them that was really painful for him was when he had taken your jewelry.
Oh, yes. So I went to work and I knew things weren't quite, he was still doing things because obviously he came back and he could still look. And so, not that I'm a real materialistic person. I'm not that way really too much, although I had all the jewelry that I consider kind of sentimental was from my family. My great uncle was a jewelry maker in Germany, gave it to my mother, and then my mother gave it to me. So I came home and I could tell things were wrong, and I just lost it. And I don't think he ever saw me, and I hadn't ever really like that. But I mean, I was livid. I went in there, told him to get up. We're going to all the pawn shops. We're doing this and that, and I was just livid. I've never been that angry in my whole life. I said, this is just done. Because what happens is it feels like it's pulling your heart out and he's not who he is. But to do something that mean and that awful after you've been trying so hard, it just hurt.
It hurt.
I couldn't believe how hurt. And
Yeah.
I've just, because you give to an addict. You really do, trying to get them to stop. And we spent thousands of dollars in rehab. And anyway, yeah,
Well,
that
and
was
you were willing to do whatever it took. I mean, you truly
right.
were.
Oh yeah, you would do anything you could possibly do. And then for him to turn around and know the few things like that I had was it just blew my heart, just blew me up. So yeah, it
Well, I
was.
think, none of us like to lose control, but I think he needed to see that. And he pretty
Yeah,
much said that, like,
you're right.
that is ingrained in my head, what he did to you. And again, we both know he didn't want to do that
Oh no,
to
Kyra,
you.
no.
It wasn't about that. It was about the drugs. It was about the need for that. And he just had to, he was running out of resources. I think that's kind of where it went at that moment,
Mhm.
actually, was the realization of, I have no more resources, like zero. And
Oh,
yeah, was that about
yeah,
that time? Yeah.
absolutely. He was kind of forging some checks. So don't do that. I mean, I was mad, but nothing like that. That's the maddest I've ever been in my whole life. I picked him up and got him in the car, and we just went it was just not a good day.
Can I ask, did you find the jewelry?
Yes, we actually did, but I had to buy it all back. See,
Oh,
that was the other thing. I had to buy it all back because he pawned it. So,
oh,
and it was kind of, I'm laughing at it now, but it's just, and then luckily I was able to get it all back because it only had been like a day or two because it was, because like I said, I don't have a lot of jewelry, so I know where it is and what it is. And it was
right.
just amazing. And he knew which pieces too. I'm laughing now, but he knew which pieces would be worth something. So anyway, and
Yeah.
they wasn't that much either. So I had to buy it
Yeah.
all back.
But
Mhm.
it's hard because when you're doing so much for someone that you love so
Mhm.
deeply, and they just, again, not, it wasn't about you, it was
No.
about all the other stuff, but it hurt, and it was hurt over and over and over, and you're just like, how much can
How much
can
can
I
you
take?
take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just so sorry because I know that was so hard. And, your husband, I'm sure, was very supportive, but he's trying to run his business, and
Right.
that I'm sure was heavy. And it was, yeah, I'm just sorry. And I know,
Yeah.
I know
Thank
he
you.
is too. And I know
Yeah.
he loves you deeply. I think you know that too.
Well, honestly, it couldn't be anything, for an addict and for somebody that has had mental health issues. I mean, triathlon and training, we couldn't have found this at a better time. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way. I mean, I don't know when this was just a perfect avenue. This is an interesting thing, Kyra, that I want to mention. He had one psychologist when he was smaller or younger, and she was actually one of the best people that we could get him to. But it still doesn't matter. Even if you get intervention like that, it's still important to try to do it yourself. But he was pretty young. But one of the things she mentioned was that Noel had a tendency to like lifestyle and be involved in those groups. So let's say the Addict community or the Heroin community,
Right.
where you go from Heroin community to triathlon community. It's just night and day. So obviously, but that's what, and I think about that. He just loved that, or not loved he just likes being a part of the lifestyle kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be happier for this.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And so now let's go ahead and move into that, because he talked about the story. We started running, and then he started running a lot. And then you and I both know, and your husband, that no one wants to get injured.
Right.
Because then you can't do what you're,
right.
really loving to do. And right now this was saving his life in
Mhm.
so many ways. And I truly get that. Even as you probably read in my book, I had an eating disorder. And so I went from running, I was running 70 miles a week, whatever, competitive with it. But I was also getting a lot of stress fractures all up and down my legs because I did not have healthy bones, so I would be sidelined, but I was very good at finding an alternative.
Right.
And so that would be aqua jogging for 3 straight hours.
Okay, that's a lot. That's good.
But I would do it. I had music attached to my head.
Yeah, there you go.
And I would be in that pool aqua jogging for 3, and I was doing intervals. However, I could get it done.
Right. No, you do.
I trained for the Paris Marathon. Most like 80% of that training was on an elliptical. So I'd be on an elliptical for 3 straight hours.
Good for you.
Just stuff like, so we're good at finding a substitute. But I love that you guys helped steer him. You had the knowledge in the background. Obviously, you guys had been well immersed and still were, in it. And so where was the point where I think he went from running to triathlon? I think you guys were like, maybe you should try multiple sports or something.
Well, in was it middle school, he really swam on a swim team for a little bit until they didn't really have a pool, and he really did pretty well. He actually it was in a meet, and it was not a long time, very short, and he beat the people. So anyway, when they were like 8 years old, I put them in a triathlon because I just wanted to try it. So he started running a lot and losing weight like he did, and then we thought, well, maybe you should try swimming, could combine it since you're good at swimming. And so then he did that. And then we did a small triathlon, he and I, in Conway, Arkansas. We got him on a bike, and I can't remember.
Now, how old was he at this point?
Well, he was 5 years, about 21, 22, when he first got really clean. And
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and lost his weight. And we started, or maybe 19, and we really, and he did super well at that. And so it just kind of perpetuated a self-esteem and happiness. And, if you know how those endorphins work. So, right. So, and he would, he was really pretty good at it. And coming out of the chute with no coaching, with no real whatever, he did pretty well. So, so I don't know, Ed and I just kind of started really encouraging it a lot more and trying to go to more triathlons for him and kind of getting him into that lifestyle. And so that's what we did.
I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's awesome. I mean, as you know, I love that lifestyle. I was a triathlete for a number of years. I guess I'm still a triathlete, but I know, but I've been doing ultra running.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we've done that too.
I love it so much. And I always tell people, remind them that you do not have to do super long distances, as I said earlier in this podcast, in order to be healthy and fit and get the benefits that we're talking about. but for him, he's when I was in the triathlon community, I mean, oh my gosh, I was like, I'm so immersed into it, and it was like, how can I do more? How can I get better? I had coaches, I did the whole thing and was competitive with it. I want to go back though, because I forgot to mention this earlier. Didn't you qualify for the Ironman in Hawaii, the big one?
Yeah. So many, many years ago, this is 1985, so 30 plus whatever years ago, I did qualify. We specifically went to a race in Louisiana from Arkansas, and I qualified for, well, we went to this race because they said who was going to win would get the trip to Kona and qualify. So this is before Ironman is anything like it is today. And so I did qualify. Well, I won the women's, but what happened was it said who wins, meaning, the man beat me. So he got the trip and I got a dozen roses. And at that time, yeah, I got a dozen roses. Yeah.
Oh.
So at that time, I couldn't afford the trip because my husband and I had our own business and we didn't have that kind of money. And I always thought, I'll do it another time. I'll do it another year. And it's interesting because you mentioned you qualified for Boston. Well, that very same year, I actually qualified for Boston too, running. And awesome. I said, I don't, I couldn't afford to go to Boston at that time. So I thought, I'll go again. So those things didn't happen actually. So, but that's okay. I know. Yeah. Qualifying for Boston, my husband was so good. He was helping to pace me and it was within 3 seconds. So had I stopped for something, I would have lost it. But I know in my head that I qualified, so it's okay. But I didn't go to Boston. I didn't go to Kona. But anyway, but that's okay. Hopefully, Noel will get to go.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And you can go with him. But yeah, for anybody who's listening, like when you're an athlete, and it's kind of a tough thing when you qualify for these things, and then if you don't go for whatever reason. And I had this one year, I qualified for Boston again, and I was going,
oh, wow.
It was the year of the bombing. So I've done Boston, I think 3 or 4 times, but it was the
Good
year.
For you.
Well, no, thank you. But it was the year of the bombings, and I was also doing full Ironman at the time. So,
no kidding.
I've almost always been training for long distance running and Ironman at the same time, which I know is crazy, but I've just like somehow worked it out. And so my coach at the time said, "You're not going to go do Boston. You're an Ironman. You're training for Ironman." And I'm like, okay, I guess I won't go. Nobody would ever say that. No, like everybody would go. And so I didn't go that year, and he could have saved my life. Granted, I should have come through quite a bit earlier than when the bombings actually happened, but nonetheless, you never know what's going to happen on race day. But I didn't go that year. But yeah, so hopefully you'll get to go, or and you never know, you might qualify again. I mean,
well, my running is not like that anymore. So my thing is, as you know, we're both training for the Tulsa Ironman. Since it's the first one, and I am training for it, but I can't really run too much anymore. So I power walk because of my knees. And so I'm going to be power walking out there. And hopefully my goal is just to come in under 17 hours and just finish. So, and that's okay because I have loved to have been that kind of competitiveness, but it's okay too. I kind of enjoy the back. People have a good time in the back. Some have a good time,
and I
as opposed to the people in the front.
and I think that's something else. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but what you did, know. And for us to try to learn to be satisfied and happy with our accomplishments without having, like, I have a pile of medals here that I really should just give to a hospital to give out to people but I still am proud of them. I mean, but to be proud of your accomplishments without having to have the medal, without having to have, these other things, I think is a really healthy place to be.
I kind of think that way. I mean, I dream every once in a while that I might qualify, but there's no way I'm going to qualify because actually my age division isn't that slow. But I think that that's part of what we were talking about from the very beginning. I'm doing this for myself. And I'm enjoying it for myself. I enjoy the way I feel. I like how I just like it. Now, Ironman training's a little bit much for a, the bike being out there for 6 or 7 hours a day, but or whatever. But I still enjoy doing it. So
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Like you had mentioned. So mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. I did my first 100K ultra recently.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
I did.
Yeah.
And here's where I am with it. I'm going to be super honest.
Was it a trail or was it on the
Trail.
street? Oh, very
Trail.
fun.
So it
Love
was,
it.
it ended up, I took a wrong turn once. So it turned into 63 miles, which is to be 62.2 or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And it's the first race that I've ever done that I was trying to talk myself out of finishing.
Oh,
Yeah.
no
Now I
way.
finished it. I
Oh,
finished
good
it,
though.
but it took me longer than I planned. And
Yeah.
there are multiple reasons why. But what I learned from it is that I think I like the 50K distance and the 50
Uh-huh.
mile distance. This is again ultras on trail running.
Right.
Best. I think they're best for me. And I share that because while I may do another 100K, and who knows, maybe I'll do Badwater one day,
Right.
I mean, or 100 milers. Badwater, I think it's 135 or something, but I may do those things. But I'm trying to be in this space, like we were talking about earlier, of what's best for me. I don't want to do those things because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
I'm doing it because I enjoy it.
Right.
And
That's what
so
you need.
yeah, and about 3 weeks ago, I did a 50K, ended up fourth in my age group. I had a great
Oh, yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I got done. I was able to celebrate with friends,
Yeah.
and that was a great day for me. So I
Trail
don't know.
running is very fun.
It
Yes.
is.
Uh-huh.
It takes a lot of focus.
Yeah. And
So it
that's
can
what
be
it helps make the
exhausting.
miles go faster.
Yeah. But I think kudos to you. And that's what I want to celebrate today too, in terms of moms and women out there in the sport. And, as we get older, it doesn't mean we have to stop. We just might have to do it differently
Right. Or
or
be in a
whatever.
different headspace. I have to say, Galveston, it was the first time I had just to know I was going to power walk, not really run.
You knew that
And
going into it, right?
right. Yeah, I knew I was. Yeah. And so I was just, the goal was just to come in, make sure I beat the time. And I was kind of calculating, am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? But at first, I have to admit, that was the first time I've ever done a triathlon where I haven't just knew I was going to power work, not even start to run, not even try to run. And because it's a weird way for my legs. And I have to admit, I cried a little bit at the beginning of that, thinking, "Oh, I wish I could run."
Oh,
And but then it was okay because I kept leapfrogging with this lady who was she'd run for minutes and then she'd walk and I'd catch her and then we'd go back and forth like this. So we talked the whole time. So it turned out to
that's
be okay.
great.
So yeah.
I love it when that happens because it makes you realize, oh, just because I'm power walking, I'm actually just as fast as that person who's running.
Right. And we had a good time. She was like, "Well, maybe I need to just power work." I said, "No, you need to keep doing your
Do
thing and
your
I'm going to do my
thing.
thing and we're
I
just
do
going
my
to talk because you know what you're doing." So we'll
Well,
see.
I think that's really a great example, and that we need to remember that is that, you know, do it your way. And
Right.
you don't need to be worried about what anybody's thinking, because they're not thinking anything. And if they are, that's probably not the people you want to hang out with anyway in your
No.
life, like
Right.
just be proud of that you're even doing it. And I think
Right.
it's huge.
That's like you. That's pretty good to be fourth in your age division though. That's great. That's
Well,
perfect.
I appreciate that. I keep telling everybody I would have gotten third had I not started hip hop dancing at the last aid station. They had this great hip hop music, and I just was like, I was fired
But that
up,
was
really
fun.
excited,
That was good for you.
It was good. And then I saw a friend of mine, and I was like, there's Patrick. Either he's having a bad race or I'm having a good race.
Yeah.
He was having a good race too. It ended up that
Oh,
he
that's
inspired me
fun.
to get in. But anyway, so now Noel is coaching you. Is that right?
Yes, he's helping me, giving me some pointers as to what to do. It's going to be funny because we're going to finish that at the Ironman at different spectrums. He'll be way up here, and I'll be. Yes, he's been coaching me, and I like the way because it's different days, kind of what we're doing, and trying to be patient. And a lot of really, he's been really good about the nutrition, advising me some on nutrition, because that is so different than many years ago. We just had power bars and Coke,
Mhm.
and nowadays there's a plethora of stuff that you can have. And so
Mhm.
he helps to explain some of that, and he's been very helpful. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The nutrition, I think, is super important with someone who, again, had an eating disorder. And I mean, I
Right.
got down to, I don't know, I was probably like 90, I was 90 pounds,
Oh
just
my
really tiny. And
goodness.
that's pretty common in female runners, even male runners. But um, I didn't,
Yes.
I ate well when I was training, but it was when I wasn't training. So I would wake up 2 hours before. I'd have a Lara bar next to my bed. I would wake up before I was going to hit the track, eat the
Oh.
Lara bar, go back to sleep because I wanted to eat it 2 hours in advance, go back to sleep, go on the track. I mean, I was diligent about my nutrition in terms of training and racing and all
Hmm.
that. And so that's why I ended up doing well with my races. But
Yes.
I wasn't good with my nutrition, just in terms of regular meals and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But now, of course, that's a long time ago, thank goodness. And I,
Yeah, that's a
my
hard thing. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's a very hard thing. And I worked my way, out of that, thank goodness. But now nutrition plays such an important role. And I do a lot of coaching as well. And
Oh, good.
yeah, I'm also a certified personal trainer and I help a lot of people. And I'm trying to help people understand the nutrition and how, you know, don't be afraid of those carbs. You just need to, just like anything, carbs, protein, fat, you just don't overdo any of it. And the
Right.
timing of it and what do you need to have before based on what effort you're about to put in. Sometimes people will eat a lot of food before a very short workout and they don't really need to do that, so
Right.
just don't, and it's like, you don't really have,
Yeah.
so anyway, I think that there's probably a lot of different information, but you're right, there's so many awesome things out there. I have to eat very clean things, like I use dates.
Yes. Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah, I've got those. Yes. Uh-huh.
yeah, dates, and then on the trails I'll stuff them with peanut butter, dates stuffed with
Yeah.
peanut butter. And I tailwind is my liquid sugar. I call it my liquid
Yeah.
sugar.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever used that product, but I do like that a lot. So you've got Ironman. Tulsa is right around the corner. Oh my gosh. And you're ready.
No. And it's kind of, we checked in at our check-in times, because they have it that way. So you can't just show up now,
Right.
given COVID. And it's just amazing because uh, it's been 2 years kind of training for this, and I still don't feel like I'm ready. And
Oh,
it's just amazing. Well, I feel like just putting it all together in one day is what's kind of a little bit overwhelming for me, because like I said, for Noel, he'll be probably almost finished before I even get to start the run. So it'll be given the time that we
is he shooting for a
start.
9:30, you think?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Well, that gives him time to go shower and come out and cheer you on.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing. I think it's great. I think, just you go into it. I mean, you're ready. You're going to be amazing.
Well,
And
thank you. I
you're a
hope
great
so.
example for all of us. And
Thank you.
yeah, I'm going to be cheering you on.
Oh,
And
good. Thank
yeah,
you.
and I know now TikTok. So what is it? Did Noel just tell me a few minutes ago, 16,000
Yeah,
followers?
there's I guess I'm Noel's mama, or Mama Mulkey. I
Mama
can't. And
Mulkey.
yeah, and I do try to get on there, and I love these. They're so cute. The people are so encouraging, and it's been so fun. And I try to remember to, because I've been doing biking a lot, and I try to show where I go biking, because it's pretty much the same places, but we do have some beautiful places. So I love all the encouragement. They're just so
Yeah.
sweet, and such nice people really out there on that. So and they've been
Well, they love
really
you.
well, they've been also really encouraging with Noel. And I think Noel's a pretty good inspiration for people. I think he's very kind,
Yes.
and he really wants to inspire people, because this lifestyle, why maybe we do a little bit in excess, this lifestyle is helpful for anybody. And honestly, I have, I mean, it doesn't really take, you can go for a walk, hopefully, or, I feel getting into communities where you might not be able to walk, that's an issue, but at least people can try to walk where they can. I don't know,
Well, yeah, and there's stuff online. I mean, find a corner in your house. You
There
can
you
go
go.
out. You can keep your fitness. Like I think heard so many people during COVID, like, oh, now that I can't go to the gym, I'm like, you've got a corner in your house. I know you
Right,
do. And
right,
I was doing free workouts for people online and just to try
right,
to help them.
right, right, right.
And I get that the gym is kind of a mind thing, but you got to keep it going. I did want to go back. I do believe your TikTok though is Noel's mom or Noel's mama. I'll make sure and put in the notes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You would
I
think
think
I would know that, right?
no, I think
But
you're right that that's what it is. But Mama Mulkey, I think, is what everyone has nicknamed you now, which is just a fun
right. Yeah.
name.
Yeah. I think
Hey,
so.
it's so cute.
You would think I would know this stuff, but I just forget things pretty easy.
But
He's been telling me, Mom, you've got the Iron Man brain right now going on, because that's all I can kind of think about what that
oh yeah,
is. So,
oh
what's
yeah.
going on.
No, I get it. So no worries. We'll make sure. But I want to encourage
Thank
our
you.
followers to follow you and support you.
Thank you. I'd love
And
that.
yeah, we need to support each other. That's what we're here to do. That's why we're doing this podcast. Like, we need to support each other out there. It is, life is not easy, but what I will tell you, and I'm pretty sure you can agree with me on this, we're all going to have stuff coming at us. For some, maybe not so much. For some, like you and me, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
And you probably lived several lives like I have, because, there's been more things beyond losing my son. That was just the big one.
Mm-hmm.
But, taking care of ourselves helps us to deal with those things in a much better way. So, I
Right.
mean, yeah, you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Taking care of yourself is always can make you a happier, or a more satisfied person, and be able to deal with other people, and in kindness too. I think
Kindness. Yeah.
being kind, that's my goal in life ever since COVID started, is just trying to really be kind and say hello to people and thank you people. And whether they say it back or not, I don't really care anymore.
I know, me too. I'm kind of like that too.
I'm walking in the morning and I say good morning, and I can't tell you how many times this fellow does not say good morning, but I'm going to keep saying it until he says it.
I love it. You should start, like, next time, have a sign. Good morning.
My husband goes,
Like,
why
do
do
these
you
different
keep doing
things,
this?
and like, it'd be so cool if, like, Noel recorded it. Like, okay, we're doing
I love his voice. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I have just a couple. Oh, I want to go back to something really quickly, because this is really precious. Before we wrap up, when all that went down the second time with
Yeah.
Noel, when he came back and he had run out of resources, and I believe he told me that you looked at him and you said, "Are you ready to detox? Are you ready?" I think you said that to him, and he said yes, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, he did.
Like he had nowhere else to go. And what I loved is that he told me that you sat there. I'm just gonna cry saying this. That you sat there and you rubbed his back.
Yeah, I did.
It's so beautiful and so precious to be in that space of, you've been hurt so much, but you still had that deep, deep love. And you're like, okay, I've got one more chance here. It's really beautiful.
We sat in his bed and pretty much for the 3 hours or 4 hours, yeah, until he could fall asleep. I did. Yeah.
I just want to thank you for that, because I know how hard it's been, and your love has just taken everybody to such a better place. And I just hope that you realize that your bravery is just beautiful and precious. And I just want people to live through you in that sense of getting strength from you, Karen. I just want to thank you for that.
Thanks a lot.
I know. So having said that, I have 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
And usually I just ask this question once, but for you, there's 2 parts. There is, I am the parent of an addict or former heroin addict. And then you are an athlete as a and I'm going to say a mature athlete. And so I want to know, first, we're going to tackle what are 3 things that you would want to share with any parent that might be going through what you've experienced?
I think as best as you can, try to seek help for yourself. I try to go to Al-Anon meetings or to find support, not so much help, support for yourself. I think to alleviate the guilt, because it's not you, your fault. And then the third thing is really look towards mental health to be sure it's not a mental health issue that actually is the basis for the addiction. Because hopefully you could get help that way. Because I didn't suspect that when he was in 8th grade, that it could have been a mental health issue, because like, who thinks that? But nowadays you could, but back then we didn't think as much. So support, guilt, and looking for to be sure that it's not a mental health issue. So
well, I think that's great. Yeah, I think it's a good reminder. Like, don't give up. Continue your exploration of the different avenues, because you might be missing something that, possibly had you known that sooner, it could have turned out differently. I mean, fortunately, where we are, it's so hard. Like, I even think about Hayes and losing Hayes, and I'm like, of course, I would rather him be here. But I have to say that the loss has helped me to not only become a better person myself, but to help other people. And so I have to look at that beauty. I have to look at, that silver lining. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the 3 things that we should know, or that you would want to tell any woman that's out there wanting to do it, whether it be a triathlon or just to simply stay fit. I mean, what do we need to know? Give us some encouragement.
I think, first of all, I'm going to say I'm over 60, and I just don't be embarrassed. Just go and just try it. Don't be embarrassed. And the reason I'm saying this is because I showed up with a group ride, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so slow. But no, but they're into their own thing. They're not really, like you had said, they're into their own thing. So just show up, give it a try, and don't be embarrassed. That's really what I'd say.
I love that. And I back that 100%. So many times we tend to think, even just going to a class at the gym,
right?
Like, for the first time, you're like, I don't, and you're nervous. And then to realize no one's even thinking about it. It's only
nobody's looking at you, right? Nobody's looking and don't look at them, and just do your thing.
Just do your thing. Like, do your thing. We have to have more confidence in our lives, and do your thing, and you will have so much more joy just in that. I can't tell you how much it's helped me. So, Karen, Mama Mulkey.
Thank you
my
so
gosh,
much.
This has been,
Thanks for having me.
I want to come visit you sometime. I'm going to come. And I also have extended an invitation to Noel, but that's to you as well.
Okay.
You guys come to San Diego, there's the Oceanside.
I know. Yeah.
Here, but it fills up really fast. Like, you have got to have your fingers on the computer when it opens up.
Right. I could see why. It's beautiful out there. I can't.
Well, and everybody that lives here, we all jump on and we do it like immediately. So I know they'll have it next year. They may have their new date or whatever. But thank you so much
thank you for having me.
For sharing your story, for helping parents, for helping everyone. We love you, and I will make sure that I'll share this, and hopefully everybody, will see this.
If they have questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.